Hello, hello, hello. So this is me from behind the camera, behind the scenes. Today I am gonna review the Yamaha HS7, but it's also gonna be a much broader video about what it feels like to upgrade from $150 speaker to around $1,500 speaker. So paying 10 times the price, what do you get? First, starting from the Yamaha HS7, I think for its price it is a great speaker. I don't think it is a great speaker overall, but if you're not, in the scene of spending thousands of euros or thousands of dollars on speakers, then there is pretty much like a few recommendations I would go with. There is the Yamaha HS7, undoubtedly the first one you should put your money into. Then comes the Adam A7X, which is about $500 or 500 euros a pair. There you will start to get much more clarity and detail in everything. And from there on, I would save my money and buy something way more expensive. So in my list of recommendations, this is the path I would follow. Going from the HS7 to the Adam A7X is such a massive upgrade that, you'll be laughing your ass off when you press play, considering you're into audio, right? And then going from the A7X to the S2V, the difference is again so big that you'll be laughing your ass off when you press play. But the HS7 in its price range has a beautiful, very even frequency response. It has quite a lot of stereo detail and information, and I think it just ticks off every box you would expect from a speaker if you're not increasingly wealthy or just into taking a loan to getting like the best audio equipment. So if you're into this video now, thinking about whether to buy these or not, go and buy these. But now I'm gonna give you the description of the difference between the Adam S2V and the Yamaha HS7. The difference in price is about 10 times, which to me is totally worth it. Now, if we had the HS7s here, then comparing them back to back, the first impression that you would get is as if, take something from here. So this is how the HS7 would sound like. A proper speaker, but as if there was like a layer of plastic or cloth just covering the entire thing. This is the Yamaha HS7 compared to the Adam S2V. Now then the S2V comes into play and suddenly you get this fantastic definition and you feel as if the music is actually coming into your ears. Yep. Now that's an audiophile thing. But you definitely feel that the entire experience of music gets much more personal, way more detailed. And I mean, it's not gonna change a tuba into a violin, right? It's still the same information that you're being presented with, but these speakers are able to respond faster to the signal that comes in. They're able to give you a more precise image of that. So it's up to discussion. If you want to change a tuba into a violin, then you're better off throwing a hammer at this speaker. But if you feel good about the HS7, but suddenly you start hearing these little mistakes in there, like, I wish there was more mid-range, or I wish the high-end, like the cymbals and the hi-hats would have a more dynamic range to it. If you already are looking for these differences, that's when you should upgrade. And you should know what you are looking for. You should be comfortable enough with your speakers that you know them very well, but after being super happy with them within like a year or so, maybe even 2 years, however long it takes, then suddenly you hear the same speaker that you've been hearing for years, but it doesn't make the cut anymore, and you start hearing very specific mistakes about the speaker. This is when you upgrade. So I definitely felt that I want more high-end clarity and also a clearer mid-range. The bass didn't bother me. These have fine bass. I mean, this one. But the mid-range definitely was lacking some clarity to me. And then I got the Adam A7X, which beautifully answered to exactly these very questions. So there you have like this super precise, amazing, almost clinical kind of high-end, high frequencies. And the mid frequencies, they might be even like over-bloated a bit, or I mean overemphasized. But they're the perfect answer to me, who was lacking this very mid-range. But then with the A7X, I also found out that I was actually in my mind already criticizing the bass as well. But it only showed when I had the HS7 and the Adam A7X by its side. I listened to both of them. And then I was like, okay, now that my high frequencies and my mids are improved, I definitely feel that the bass could do better too. And then I had to pay 10 times as much to get like the improved version of everything, which is my perfect speaker. So I was previously at the high frequency detail. So what happens there is that again, you start noticing way more stereo information. It was there before as well, but suddenly there's as if something is directing your attention towards it. Then every kind of percussive elements or reverbs even, or any sort of high frequency information suddenly starts getting more color. There's a wood block and a metal block. When somebody hits them, it would make a difference to your ears. If somebody hits a wooden block with a metal rod, no, what do you call it, a metal stick, then that's one sound, and if it's wood against wood, it's another sound. So these kind of little stories within your music start making itself very clear all of a sudden. The same goes for the mid-range. Now, instruments, whether they are recorded in a studio or even like the size of the studio, you start noticing these kind of things. Whether, I don't know, whether the instrument strings were like fresh and new, or were they old when they were played. Maybe they were just about to snap. There's a difference in sound that you would never notice with the HS7, but paying 10 times the amount, you start hearing these little stories. And same with the bass. So there's a difference between, let's say, a bass that sounds gooey and the bass that sounds slimy, right? One is slightly wetter, the other has more of a viscous, or viscous, I think that's the word, viscous kind of texture. One of them is like, you know, thick cannon oil, and the other is a bit more like your olive oil, you might say. Funny comparisons as they are, this is what you will start receiving if you invest into high-end studio monitors, especially, and actually undoubtedly only, if you also have the proper investment done in your room, meaning the proper acoustic treatment. Because having these and these side by side here, yes, it would make a difference, but it's nowhere near as big as to what happens with these speakers once you treat the room properly. Now, the frequency spectrum, another important thing, becomes much more even as you pay more money. This should make sense, but I have to say that, like, when it comes to the bass, which I was really looking for a very good bass that would fit in my room the proper way. And I tried every speaker from like the HS7 all the way up to the Adam S2V, but there were Genelecs and there was many other companies that I ordered, testing like everything that's out there. And they just didn't make the cut. The bass was not improved at all. And still the 150 euro speaker was just as good when it came to the bass frequency, meaning they were all kind of shit. That's the point. there were speakers and actually the HS7 was the best of them, I'd say, because there were speakers where they were very precise speakers, like little scalpels, but they didn't have any sort of power to the bass. So it might have been clear bass, very clear, but you had to look for the information, and it was just not intriguing, especially in a properly treated studio. And then there were others which the bass was just, there was a lot of it, but it was bloated, like it was just like bouncing around the room, and it caused more problems than pleasure, because you know, if there's like a fast kick drum, but after the kick drum is gone from the speakers, then you still hear the echoes in your room of this bass, then everything becomes sort of like this linear kind of mush, and all the way up to like 2,000 euros a pair or $2,000 a pair. There was no answer to this question, except the Eve audio speakers had an excellent bass. But at that point I didn't leave them for other reasons. I didn't keep them, so I kept on going up the ladder, and then I ended up with the Adam S2V, which is able to give like a living room size kind of room. When properly treated, it's able to give you a very precise and quick bass, which doesn't stay around like in your room just echoing and ruining the entire experience, but rather it stays very punctual and very pungent. Yes, pungent is the word. As a final thought, I would like to add that, you know, as I'm telling you that suddenly you start hearing hundreds of little nuances and stories inside the music when you spend 10 times the amount. Suddenly every piece of wood and metal becomes different, and you hear the echoes of the room where the instruments were recorded, and you actually notice them. And you know, every element, like there's a 1 dB change in volume, you start hearing these things and noticing these things. But it is a gradual process. So go step by step. Start with the Yamaha HS7, and after you will love them. I mean, you will love, if these are the speakers that you buy, then you will love them from first sight. And most likely, other than if you are just way too rich, you're not even thinking about upgrading. But one day you will be thinking about upgrading, and then first make sure that you absolutely understand what you need to upgrade. What are you looking for? So my first search was for more high frequency detail and more mid bass kind of clarity. I got it with the Adam A7X, but from there on I was also looking for a bit more definition and softness in the highs, and then a clearer and more stronger bass, and then I was willing to 5x again in terms of investment. But do it only if you understand like what you're looking for, because you can start hearing these little beautiful stories within music once your ear is ready, once it is looking for them. And if you just go like, I've never made music, or I've never listened to a song before, and then I will buy the most expensive piece of gear and I will have the biggest amount of enjoyment, then I don't think that's the fact. You will need to practice and develop your hearing, and it will take years. But eventually you will get to a point where, I think I just replied to Patrick like below my Nana video, that for me, I would spend every extra cent that I have on high-end audio gear, because today for me, my hearing is the most precious experience I have on earth. So there are people, you know, driving to work with like super expensive cars, which basically is, you know, it's a seat and it takes you from place A to place B. So why is that a big investment in your life? Why do you want to spend 30,000 on your car and then buy $50 headphones? Now, to me, this would be a ridiculous move. Instead, I will one day spend a couple of thousand on the car and 30,000 on the headphones, because your senses are walking around with you your entire life. And if you hear your music better if you hear these little stories within these tracks and these players and these instruments. Then also walking outdoors, you will experience a whole different world. And like bird song echoing off of concrete becomes a very different experience than bird song echoing off of, let's say, like the grass in the forest, or the moss and the stuff, the ground, like the soft ground with the dirt. It's a much softer experience to the ear, and there's much less like delays and echoes going around in the forest, rather than if you're walking on a highway and birds are singing next to the highway, then you hear these bounces off of the road of the highway, and maybe you're going like walking past the bus stop, and then there's the plastic walls of the bus stop or glass, then that's again, it's a different sound than the pavement. So at one point when you're in this point, then it makes all the sense in the world to spend all of your money on great audio gear. And I've been doing it for a few years now. My girlfriend is already worried and telling me to stop, but instead I decided I'll make videos of that. So achieving these little stories is a magnificent addition to your life. And if somebody would come and take all of my audio gear, which has happened before, by the way, but if somebody comes and takes it all away, then I still have my hearing. And every day that I walk around like this life and this earth deep, then I will get a more unique experience. And I think if hearing is the part of life that you enjoy, then invest in it. All right, that's it from me today. Have a great day.